Masters of the Sun, there's gonna be an album that's tied. They're already finishing that up in the studio right now. Like this is
crazy.
Fucking,
that's so cool, man.
It's crazy. And to think that like I was like doing this in my little fucking, I was just Barnes and Noble in Burbank writing this fucking book, like just on my own with my headphones on, just listening to music and like hand writing this fucking thing and being like, I have no idea what this is gonna become, but I feel like it's dope and we just gotta, make this shit.
Presenting The Wave by LA Top Team.
What's up, guys? Thanks again for joining us back on The Wave, the most interesting show in real estate. On this episode, we really get the creative juices flowing with Ben Jackendoff. We talk about growing up in Jersey, moving to New York to chase a dream, and then eventually moving to LA, where he's been home for the last 10 years. And he basically has his fingers in all things creative, from music to comic books to movies, video games. Mostly we touched on his big project coming out with Will.I.Am, the musical artist Will.I.Am, who also is a renaissance man of creativity, does a lot of things in the creative world. They have a zombie hip-hop themed comic book backed by Marvel that has just dropped. It was great to talk to him about how he's made those relationships, fostered those relationships, and made it all kind of seem organic when it was really a 10-year process of building behind the scenes and vision. It takes so much vision. I think what I pulled away from this talk was Ben has an unbelievable, uncanny ability to see what he wants in the exact way that he wants it, and then pull the necessary members together to make it happen. And I think that's something that would account for his success, not only in the creative side, which is obviously where he's been having the success, but anything he would have put his mind to. This was eye-opening for me. I don't know anything about comics. This was a step into that world, and honestly, I loved it. And talking to Ben and hearing about what he does behind the scenes and how much goes into what we see as cartoons on the outside world. And to be honest, I can't wait to show up to his comic book Sunday. He has every Sunday basically a conglomerate of creatives from all different industries that come together under a very casual guise, and we just hang, chill, and figure out how we can help each other out. And thank you guys so much again for tuning in. Really excited to bring you this interview with Ben. When you guys are listening to this, he will have already gone to Comic-Con, had a great, successful trip, and we'll see what's coming up next for him. Here we go, Ben.
So, obviously, New York Comic-Con is the launch of the augmented reality aspect.
There's 2 Comic-Cons?
There's a ton of Comic-Cons.
Okay.
So basically, the 2 really big Comic-Cons are San Diego Comic-Con, obviously, and then there's New York Comic-Con.
Okay.
And New York Comic-Con, has really kind of taken off the past, several years. I mean, look, all these Comic-Cons have taken off because everything in Hollywood is IP driven.
Right.
Intellectual property. All right. Yeah, I mean, so with augmented reality, it's kind of an interesting step forward in creating a deeper relationship to a physical project or a property or whatever.
Right.
So
a deeper experience for the user.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because so I don't know. I mean, we've dived right in. We can go back a little bit.
You want to just tell, just your little.
Yeah. So I mean, we haven't even really met.
No, but I'm cool. I like talking about augmented reality. I'm like, tell me more.
Yeah. Augmented reality. I mean, the cool thing about working with someone like Will.I.Am is that his mind and what he wants to do and focus on is always very future tech driven. And I have always been someone, a bit of a futurist.
Right.
and also at the same time, I like to see how things that we have now, whether it's physical, paper books or whatever, how they can kind of be used for, deeper experiences and touch points for storytelling. Because, I mean, my vision is like everything is storytelling at the end of the day, with what we're doing, with this project. It's kind of, it really took an interesting turn because I was brought on. I met Will.I.Am through a mutual contact. We just started bullshitting at the studio, and
this is a animation studio.
No, so the Will's music
recording.
I mean, so he's got a really interesting studio because he's kind of got all sorts of elements to it, you know, with he's got which I didn't wear today, or my button, you know, he's got the buttons, which are the headphones. You know, he's developing all sorts of different things and a lot of, you know, tech driven, you know, apps and this and that and clothing and fashion and music, and you know, he's just got his fingers in everything.
The lines are super blurred over there.
Super blurred, which is like really what I love, because that's where my head is, and you know, and at the time, like, I didn't really know that. I met him and he was working on this film that I think he had written and was actually, I met him when he was doing a scene, you know, he was like in his own movie that they were doing, and we just started bullshitting, and you know, what came up was that I've been doing these networking groups this networking group for almost 10 years now, called Comic Book Sunday. So my vision with that was to connect film people and animation people with comic book people. And
you started it?
Yeah, I started it.
Dope.
So yeah, that was like, you know, I had been kind of seeing this trend with comics, you know, turning into films and you know, just going further and just being in comic books. And because what got me into comics, this is way back when, I did a documentary on comic books.
Were you a comic book kid?
I was a super comic book kid.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when I was like 11, me and my best friend John were like, we're gonna make comic books when we grow up.
So that was your dream.
Oh yeah.
Fuck.
It was one of those things where we were like, we're gonna make comic books, and this is like, and I wanted to be the artist, and he wanted to write, you know.
Okay.
And it kind of swapped. I ended up becoming the writer because I didn't really practice my art craft because I got into music. So I was like, do I want to play bass and rock out in bands, or do I want to sit around and draw all day? And I was like, well, I like to turn on the distortion pedal and rock on my guitar, and you know.
So is he still illustrating?
No. So my friend John's back in New Jersey doing New Jersey stuff.
That's where you're from?
Yeah, I'm from Jersey. So yeah, John, we go way back. We were like 5 years old and have known each other since that time, playing G.I. Joes together and all that stuff.
Right.
But you know, it was one of those cool things where it was like, you know, as kids growing up, you know, it's like comic books. We were in a really interesting time of comics because, you know, it was that time of the bubble. So I don't know if you know, like, kind of rise and like, so comics blew up again in like the early 90s.
Okay.
You know, and that was the time where Image Comics was first born, and with Rob Liefeld and Will Petrasio and, you know, Todd McFarlane, which is Spawn and all that kind of stuff. So it was really cool because, like,
you said Spawn?
Spawn, yeah.
Tom McFarlane made Spawn?
Yeah, Tom McFarlane.
Is he related to Seth MacFarlane?
No.
Okay.
Todd McFarlane was an artist who used to do like Spider-Man.
Okay.
And I mean, this guy was a genius when it came to like creating like just a fucking empire. Like, so he basically he does all those toys. You ever see the McFarlane toys? Like, they're super high detail, like, anyway, what?
Okay.
So
what are they? They're high
like,
detail
super,
figurines?
Yeah, figurines. And then he was like also really into like, his story was interesting too, because I think he was going to go into playing Major League. He wanted to play Major League Baseball, and he ended up not being able to do that. So he was one of those people that just was like, I really want to draw. So he just spent every day just drawing until he became so fucking good. And, you know, he basically built an empire off of Spawn and, you know, the toys. And
right.
But he, like, was the one who picked up, I think, the Major League Baseball. Remember those old starting lineup baseball toys? No? This is, like, way back in the day. Like, I don't know how
I was playing with, I'm 27.
Okay,
yeah,
so I'm 10 years older than you. So,
okay.
like, when I was, like, probably, like, 10, we had the starting lineup, so you collect all the different, like, you know, Bo Jackson, obviously, was a big one, because, right?
Favorite of all time.
Right?
Kate's
yeah.
a huge Bo Jackson fan.
So,
Obviously, you know.
Yeah, there you go. No, yeah, right. If Bo, what was that saying? If Bo does, it was Bo can't. Bo knows baseball. Bo knows.
Bo knows.
Right? Bo knows.
Bo does know.
That was so good.
Bo Jackson debuted the Air Maxes, right? Those are like his shoes.
Did he really?
I think the Air Max 90s, Bo
That's
Jackson
sick.
was the one that...
Right?
See? She would know.
There you go. So Bo Jackson. Well, that was all the starting lineup shit, you know, but kind of wrapping back around, you know, with comics and Image Comics, you know, kind of relaunching.
Image Comics is the brand name.
So they're still around. So Image Comics put out Walking Dead. That, you know, so the interesting thing with Image Comics is that their whole idea was to be creator owned, because Marvel, DC, anytime you do anything with those guys, they own your stuff. Like, they'll hire you and it's a work for hire. So you're coming on to work on their IP, which is Spider-Man, you know, Captain America.
Like a record label?
Well, it depends. It depends. If you're like a session guitarist and you come in and you're paid like, you know, $500 an hour. Yeah. It's like, boom. All right, cool, man. You know, and then you're off, and they're making money off of your thing. So, what Image did was they were like, fuck, man, like Rob Liefeld, who created Deadpool, who created, all the Cable, which is
Damn.
So, like, he doesn't own those characters. Those are in the X library. And, it's Fox.
He would have made millions off the show, movies that just came out.
But here's the crazy, you know how much money this guy... So, Image Comics launches, and Rob Liefeld's one of the founding partners of Image. So, he's a young guy, whatever, this artist who, like, had a very specific style, and people really liked his art and all that jazz. So, Youngblood was his first, big comic that he launched out, and then he did another one called Brigade and whatever. This guy sold 1 million copies of Youngblood #1. Now think about that. That's him being creator owned. Them, so how much money, like, that was just #1 issue of Youngblood, right? So, and it was going for $2.99.
I was going to say, what was the...
Come on, man. That dude just pulled in like $3+ million in one drop of a fucking comic.
Damn.
That was crazy. That was the 90s. Because what happened was that, I think, from what I understand, what launched the whole thing was that there was a Superman, that first appearance of Superman issue, the Action Comics, sold for so much money that everybody started thinking, oh my God, like, this is an investment. We should start buying up comic books.
So they just sold the Superman franchise basically to Marvel? Or?
No. So what happened was someone had an issue of Action Comics, whatever, numbered, whatever the first appearance of Superman, the iconic thing of him lifting a car up. I don't know if you... So anyway, that issue from 19 whatever sold for like $1 million. So all of a sudden people go, oh my God, like first appearances and #1s are like going to be worth a lot of money. So that's what, so X-Men relaunched, they did X-Men #1. So all of a sudden they sold like, 500,000 copies. And, so what started happening was people started everything became a #1. So everybody starts going, oh my God, well, I better buy like 10 #1s. Remember the death of Superman? I don't know. We were probably too young for that. But like there was the death of Superman, and then Superman gets back to life. Like it was this big build up to like killing off Superman, and then like him returning. And it was like that number, like it was in a black bag and shit.
Right.
Oh my God, everybody, that book is worth not much now.
Nothing.
It's like, yeah. I mean, you might get $30 for some of these books. I mean, the ones that are from the Golden Age and the Silver
They tried to
Age.
copy what Image did with that #1.
Well, this was all around the same time. So this was all happening. And Image, everybody's making a shit ton of money. They made a shit ton of money. But what was happening was that this bubble started happening. And this was like the bubble of the 90s of comic books.
Okay.
And comic books basically, just... everyone, like, they couldn't keep up. Image was putting out so many books, and then so many #1s, and then they couldn't keep up with #2, #3, #4. So you get all these readers that are stoked on it and going, when's #2 coming out? When's #3 coming out? And then all of a sudden it's like, well, it's, who knows?
They couldn't follow
Yeah,
up.
because you didn't have like strong editorial. There wasn't strong enough infrastructure because all these artists don't fucking,
Or they're not structured. They're
not
artists.
structured, so they're drawing #2 and like, I'll get to it when I get to it.
Let's go Spark and Jay, like, fuck it.
Yeah. So,
Hey, want to go jam, play some
Let's
bass?
go chill, man. Let's play some bass, man. Yeah. So
It was hard to get reach
So
the demand.
that was exactly, and then that started kind of creating a fatigue of #1s, and that was this implosion of comic books in the 90s. So, and it was interesting because what picked up that slack, I talked to a lot of comic book shop owners from that time period. What saved them was Magic the Gathering, the card game. I don't know if you know the card game.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So Magic the Gathering was what saved comic book shop owners. And I was one of those kids that, like, I was like, fuck this. I'm not getting... When's Wetworks #2 coming out? I don't know. Oh, I'll spend my money that I just got from mowing the lawn on
This pack of Magic.
Some Magic. Yeah, the Dark just came out, man.
Right.
I'm gonna get some Magic the Gathering cards. So that became like this kind of shift in what was happening, with comics, and comics kind of...
From that group of consumers. They went from comic books, and the demand was so high and the supply was so low. They said, we got to have fantasy. Give us some fucking fantasy.
Yeah,
Magic
and interaction, because the big thing about a comic book shop was you would go to the comic book shop, you'd hang out with the fucking people, you would have a similar group of people that are all into the same kind of stuff, and you would talk about the different comics, you would get, and be like, oh man, I just, I picked up this book, you should try this out, whatever. And what shifted it was that same thing into Magic. It was like, okay, I got to do, I got to get this card, I got to get this, I got, I'm getting all this new packs coming out. Da, da, da. So it was interesting seeing that, like you said, the consumer shift happened, but it kept the comic book shops in business. I contract a lot with Millennium Films. And
a lot of what?
I contract Millennium Films. Hitman's Bodyguard. You see that new movie? Ryan Reynolds and Sam Jackson.
Okay.
Expendables.
So it's a company.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's Millennium? It's a
film
company.
production company.
I
Yeah.
see. Okay.
So Millennium, like their whole business model is based on foreign pre-sales. So with foreign pre-sales, basically you sell to these like Euro Video and whatever, and they'll give you like $2 million or $500,000, and then you take that money and then they buy it before they get the movie.
Okay.
But they'll buy it as a part of a package deal. Usually, they're like, all right, well, we also want to buy Hitman's Bodyguard, so we'll buy all these different titles from you. Like that's not always the way it works, but sometimes it'll be sold as a package deal. So then they write a check for X amount of dollars. That money then is used bank to go and do the production. Blah, blah,
That's your budget.
yeah,
basically.
Or
Okay.
or you get the rest from domestic, whether it's a Lionsgate or in this case it's Saban Films, I think, is doing the domestic. So anyway, whatever. That's a whole other side of another business.
How'd you get into that whole world? Was it comic books that got you into film, or film that got you into comic books?
It was kind of both. Like so back in the so I started out. I was an English major.
Where'd you go to school?
Ursinus, and then I went to Rutgers.
Okay.
It was like PA, and then because I was gonna do chemistry. I was gonna be a biochem major and do pharmaceutical shit, and I didn't really want to. My dad was like, "This is what you need to do because you make a lot of money doing it." And I was like,
Fuck
"All
that."
right," but but yeah, I mean, I just was like, I really want to make movies, and I've been, what really kind of got me into everything was music. Because I wanted to do scoring for film. Like, that was my first kind of thing. I was like, I just played just all the time. I was always, like, writing fucking weird scores and shit. And then see the movie in my head. And then I was like, well, fuck it.
Like epic build-ups? Like,
yeah. And just, like, or weird drones or, like, just, like, crazy shit. Just, like, all sorts. And I was doing it on, like, my little Tascam 4-track. And, with digital delay pedals and all sorts of weird shit. And then a shitty keyboard, and my bass and my guitars and all sorts of, whatever weird instruments I had around.
By yourself in the lab?
Yeah, in the lab, man. My upstairs attic lab.
So I'm imagining you with a harmonica.
Yeah, right.
Double pedal, a bass kicker next to it.
Right.
And then
Just
like a
getting into
double-headed
man.
guitar.
Yeah. That was how I was rocking out. And then one hand on the synth.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, we got this shit, man. Yeah.
That's
vibing out, bro.
That's what you just painted for me.
It's good. Well, I like that. It was less epic than that, but let's keep that picture.
Okay, so you liked making the scores, and that's what you wanted to do.
That's really what I wanted to do, because to me, picture and music were always such like a huge thing. And growing up, again, back to comics, reading comics, I always wanted to like have some sort of score. So I would make my own scores. I would like put a bunch of different CDs on and like just kind of cycle them in and out and be like, for some reason I always remember like this X-Men run. I was listening to Pigface. I don't know if you remember that fucking industrial metal band. Like they were
Pigface.
Pigface.
I like it.
Yeah, they were some heavy shit. It was like at the time I was really into Ministry and Godflesh and like some weird fucking industrial
Deep heavy metal industrial shit.
Yeah, it was like
trying to figure out, is that an instrument?
Yeah, it sounds like, Justin Broderick, who was the dude from Godflesh, was like, that's awesome. I want to make music like that.
So you grew up in Jersey in the 80s then?
Yeah, 80s, 90s.
I've never been to Jersey, but I hear Jersey in the 80s was Wild Wild West, essentially.
I mean, probably. We grew up in a small town that was like super isolated from everything. Like one of these like really, kind of whitewashed working class, blue collar, towns in between like two of like some of the richest towns in South Jersey, Moorestown and Merchantville, and then there was Maple Shade.
Right.
We were like we were the armpit of the armpit, like they always say New Jersey's the armpit of America.
You were in that crevice.
Yeah,
of
I was
the
like
armpit.
in the crevice of a crevice. Like you're like, I mean, with all love to Maple Shade, but it's like, it's one of those places you're like, yeah, you probably won't get out of Maple Shade. You're probably gonna be stuck here.
Yeah.
Working in a,
Look at you now, Hollywood.
Fucking
Partner Will.I.Am.
Right. You just keep grinding. But but yeah, I mean, so it all tied into that. But what I ended up doing was I bought a whole like Final Cut. Like, so I took a class like on film editing, and we used Premiere like way back when, like Premiere, like fucking where you had jazz drives. Remember those fucking things? No, right? It's good shit. jazz drives and the zip drives. So it was like you had to get a jazz drive in order to take the class. 1 gigabyte. It was these giant tape cartridge things. Anyway, so
floppy disks are ancient to me.
yeah,
Pre-floppy.
Oh, this is post floppy.
Okay,
so it was a weird
post-floppy.
interim thing before like USB.
Okay.
Right. So like there's this company that did these zip drives and jazz drives, and you had this fucking whatever. It was a nightmare.
It was how you stored data.
Yeah, and you're like, oh my god, it's got a gigabyte on this fucking beast of a thing. Yeah. So it was
Now we got like hundreds.
yeah, like oh my your phone has more than all this shit.
Yeah.
But basically I ended up taking this class in at Rutgers Camden actually, like during the summer, and they were like go make a short film, and it was like experiments in filmmaking it was called. It was like just be weird and do something weird, and we were like, all right. So actually my best friend that I had always talked about doing comics with, I got him to star in it, and we went out and did it, and it was called like Dirty Laundry, and it was like a weird fucking I always wanted to do a short film in a laundromat, so I went and shot. I got this asked this the Chinese laundromat down the street. I was like, yo, like I'm gonna make a short film. Can we come in here and like hang out? And they're like, well, as long as you don't disrupt people doing laundry. And I'm like, fine, we got this. Like, well, we'll figure this shit out. So we shot this fucking weird short film in a laundromat.
What was the premise and how long was it? Do you remember?
It was like 5 minutes. So it was about this dude who like ended up killing someone like did him wrong when he was a child kind of thing. And like we had this weird shot, and like he used to be locked up in a closet, and we had the shot in a closet. It was all red. He's like, no, don't hit me. Ah!
It was just
He's
weird,
like,
creepy shit.
Yeah, get beat up, and you hear scream, and it's just like this closet and like weird kid shit hanging out. And then like you see him like just standing there at the laundromat, and his eyes are watching the thing, and we cut to the laundry spinning, and back to his eyes spinning, and then we see him like driving. He's like, rah, getting all weird and shit, and like so it kind of plays to the fact that he killed the person that fucking used to abuse him, manipulate him, whatever
was going on.
Whatever was going on, we left that up to your imagination,
Okay.
And we could have done a better job on making sure that the bloody shirt looked more bloody,
Right?
Because it just looked like he spilled some Kool-Aid on it.
A little bit of ketchup and Kool-Aid.
It was really bad. But when you're fucking 18 or 19, or
That's what I was gonna ask. You're 18?
I was like 19, baby. Yeah, I was like, man, this is some art, man. We're making art here. So yeah, that was our first short film.
Maiden voyage.
Yeah, maiden voyage of of Dirty Laundry. But yeah, so then like learning from that, I was like, fuck this. I'm like, I'm gonna get a system. So you
enjoyed it. You said, this is
yeah,
cool.
I was like, this
The
is
people who
dope.
saw it liked it, said, all right, that's cool.
Yeah, they were like, dude, it's weird. It's nice job for a first time out doing a fucking weird little movie.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I still have it on VHS somewhere back in my mom's place in Jersey.
Gotta keep that.
Right?
Gotta
It's
keep
one of those ones
that.
that one day I'll show this and be like, yo, this is my first foray.
Yep.
But so I was like, you know what? Instead of keep going over sinus, which costs a shit ton of money, I was like, and I like had money from like one of these little scholarships there. I was like, I'm gonna take that money and I'm gonna put it towards getting a system. So like I bought, like I called up, like
So they give you money for a scholarship. You're like, I'm good.
Yeah, well, I had a full crazy
You had
I
room
a
and
full,
board, too?
Here's the crazy thing. I had a full ride to go to Rutgers, right? And I would have gotten like pretty much like wouldn't have had to pay anything. And instead, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go to Ursinus. Like they like gave me a decent enough scholarship, but it wasn't like one of those. Still was paying a lot of money. And my grandfather actually, God bless my grandfather, left all the grandkids money to go to school. His thing was educate. He was a professor at Temple.
Okay.
And he was like, school's everything, education is everything. He's a first generation immigrant, from Odessa. Raised in New York City, like, one of those typical immigrant stories, he would tell us, we used to have cardboard on our shoes for our feet, it was cold, and we lived in the East Village, and, all those kinds
in the 20s and 30s in New York, he might have.
I know, I'm sure he did. It was like, yeah, because he lived, like, I guess, when was he born? It was probably, like, because he fought in World War II. So yeah, it was definitely like post depression. He was born like, he lived through the depression probably because he was 19. I don't even know.
Dude.
Fuck, man. Anyway,
rough.
I'm terrible with time, like, figuring out dates and shit. But yeah, I mean, so it was one of those cool things. Like, he left us the money, and it was like, you know, do with this what you will, but make sure it goes towards your education and towards your career and your future. You know, so I was like, all right, well, I'll take that money and buy myself a system. And at the time, Final Cut 1 just was coming out. So I talked to this company, and they were like, yeah, we're packaging Final Cut systems. And they were like, it costs, you know, whatever it did at the time, $8,000 or whatever. You know,
Damn.
Which at the time was like super cheap, because if you think about it, Avids back in the day were like 100,000 plus, you know, to buy a full Avid system. This is why like Final Cut was kind of like a new transition into the kind of really home computing age when it came to, you know, editorial. Final Cut's editing software, along with Premiere, which was like, at the time, Premiere, which now is kind of picked back up again, Premiere. So there's like really 3 editing softwares that were Avid obviously was always the you know, still is the gold standard of film editing software. And then, you know,
Is that digital or is that all?
Everything's digital.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, it's
when you said $100,000, I'm thinking
but
it's
it was.
like a.
But yeah, I mean, you have to, so back in the day with an Avid system, you had these full on. They were very hardware driven. So you had chassis, you had like all this crazy shit. You had all these integration devices and full racks and all sorts of stuff. So, you know, then Final Cut really kind of jumped that, because Apple bought this company called Macromedia that was I guess it was Macromedia's Final Cut. They bought it, and Apple made it Apple Final Cut. So that was the beginning of Final Cut. And that became, you know, this industry standard when this guy Walter Murch cut this film Cold Mountain on it. So for a long time, it wasn't until Final Cut 3, it was like everybody was like, oh, it's just a little consumer editing software. And, you know, but it really was a robust system and had a lot of potential. And then Walter Murch was the one who kind of launched it in. But so I got Final Cut 1. So, you know, I was learning on Final Cut. And so I kind of, you know, it became a desirable thing to have as soon as people started using it professionally.
Right. Once they realized, okay, it can produce the quality that we need for feature film.
Absolutely. And so like that was, but so having bought that system, I was then, you know, like, fuck, I'm gonna start shooting stuff. So again, did little short films, like every little, you know, young filmmaker at 19.
Well, you had to learn how to use the shit.
Right, you gotta figure the shit out.
Yeah.
I'm like, Mom, let's do a short film. Okay, you're gonna eat bread and drink coffee. No, Mom, don't act, don't talk, don't say anything.
Okay,
no,
do less.
Do less. Yeah. No, Mom, just sit there. Okay, great. That's okay. Cut. So that was
Next.
That was I was like, can we do take 32? Okay, Mom, just do the same thing. So yeah,
I can't eat any more oatmeal.
This coffee is making me crazy.
It's fucking cold.
Right, too much coffee. So yeah, so that was like doing that. I then ended up connecting up with a documentary filmmaker out of New York. And at the time, I was also working with my dad's company. He was
just an organic interaction,
yeah,
or you sought him out?
Well, so it was actually through Columbia College. My cousin was a grad from there, and she would always send me like the Columbia job postings or whatever.
Dope.
So at the time, I was like running this. This is super random. My dad worked with this company doing, working with Johnson & Johnson type stuff. So we were doing a lot of, like sutures and heart shit and all whatever. Anyway, so the company was interested in kind of getting into video production. So I started doing like little training videos for the company, and they brought me in full time to set up and run their video department. I'm like fucking again,
random as hell.
19 years old, you know, just because I had the system. So like I just came in and started. So what we were doing was like these conferences, so hernia conferences and weird shit like that, you know. I was shooting operations on like people's knee, like I remember doing a knee surgery,
right?
You know, shooting that and then having to edit that back together. So we were doing all this like,
it's work though.
It was work.
It's work though.
Come on, when you're 19 years old, you're making like almost $20 an hour. You know, where's that
40
money?
grand a year, something like that.
Right,
Loving it.
And I was still in school, so it was kind of back and forth and whatever, you know. But that was the time when I actually got that job posting hooked up. So the first documentary I ever worked on was on plus size modeling. Super random. So like going around to like the Lane Bryant fucking runway shows and shit, right? So like Kiss playing at Lane Bryant, we're like front and center at this Lane Bryant runway show, and I'm like, woo,
and
plus size modeling, you know? Yeah, it was super random. Like it was the most random documentary. So that was like kind of my intro to documentary filmmaking. And we got into some festivals and stuff, like, you know, because it's all about body positive. which we were so ahead of the curve. Like that's like a huge thing now.
It's like Dove's main marketing push.
Yeah, and we were doing this in like 2000, man.
Right.
Like, it was crazy. So we were ahead of the curve on that, and then it was called Curve. The documentary was called Curve, so we were ahead of the curve.
Dude, that's...
Yeah, it was really interesting. We were in like Newport Film Festival and a couple other film festivals, and I made some like lifelong friends out of it. It was really great. Like one of my friends actually he used to be the head of Ford modeling or VP at like because he ran the 12 plus division over there, and now he owns like the biggest plus size modeling agency, or they're just an agency I think across the board, but their focus is the 12 plus. Or whatever sizes, I don't know.
Whatever qualifies you for plus size.
But I don't know if you know Iskra Lawrence, who's like huge, like whatever.
Is she the vocal? There's a plus size model who's been super vocal about like the...
Ashley Graham has been really big
I think
with
that
that.
name sounds
Like she was in the swimsuit, like
Mm-hmm.
Sports Illustrated, and then but Iskra is like she's on Aerie or something. Anyway, this is like completely off topic, but like
There is no off topic.
Yeah, right.
There is no
I'm
off
the most
topic.
random person. I have a million things I've had my fingers in. So like, yeah, so like he's doing that now, and he's killing it. I mean, it's cool to see how people, this was like, God, like 17, 16 years ago. I don't even know. But then from that, the same team, we did that plus size thing. We jumped into doing a comic book documentary. And because the woman
whose idea?
So it was the guy Constantine Valhouli was the director and producer of it, and I was the filmer and editor. I was coming from the tech side. So, because I owned all the gear, it was like in the band, it's like, all right, who's got the drums? You're the drummer,
right?
It's like, all right, cool, figure it out,
By default?
Yeah, by default, you're the guy who does this. So that was kind of what happened with that. But basically, we had the woman who was doing the plus size documentary that was kind of our executive producer, this woman, Catherine Schuler, was married to an editor at Marvel who had passed away. So she knew everyone from the whole Marvel world, and just in general in the comics world, DC, Marvel, everything. Because I mean, it's a small community, and especially back then, it was I think it was Mark Grunwald was the name of the editor that she was married to, and anyway, so she ended up hooking up with this guy, hooking us up with this guy, Peter Sanderson, who was at the time, kind of not doing anything, but he had been Marvel's historian forever. Like any of those like books on all the characters in every universe of Marvel, he wrote. Like he was the guy in Marvel that they would go, hey Peter, what happened in blah 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 blah, and what was the continuity?
Does this check out?
Yeah, and he was that dude, right? So he was like kind of our overall consultant. Plus he knew all the people in comics, so he knew like, John Byrne and Chris Claremont and all these names you probably don't know, but these were like
the heavy hitters.
Yeah, heavy hitters. Frank Miller, so like all these cats. Like we did this documentary before anyone was doing documentaries on comic books. We were actually, it was us, and BBC was just starting to do one, I think, or one of the, so anyway, so we just ended up shooting. It was like DIY. It was me with a fucking camera and sound gear and a backpack. And I literally shot, like, I went to Chris Claremont's house with just like all my shit and like show up in the door. I'm like, hey man. He's like, oh, hi, blah, blah. So it was me and Peter. And like Chris was like, you want some hazelnut coffee? I remember this because Chris Claremont was one of my favorite writers growing up as a kid. He wrote all the dope X-Men comics. And I was like, yeah, I'll take some hazelnut coffee. But it was like, that was the cool
Probably
thing
didn't
about...
even drink coffee at that time.
Yeah,
just
no, I was, oh my god,
gritting it down.
I was like, can I have the pot, please?
Right?
Like, I will take all your hazelnut coffee.
Do you have the grounds? Can you throw some grounds in there.
What pour can it get into?
Right?
So it was just a really cool project because it was a very small team and it was us doing it. That was it. I was editing it in my bedroom, literally, like in between going just like, so I was still at Rutgers. I was commuting back and forth to New York, and I'm fucking editing this thing as we're getting footage coming in. And then I'm going to stupid classes where I'm like, fucking hate school. I want to be doing shit.
Not sleeping much, it sounds like.
Yeah, no, dude. Come on.
Sounds like you're ripping it, yeah.
So, yeah, and there was that. And then, so after that, that was really what got me connected in the whole comic book world. And then I got into reality.
And you loved comic books as a kid, so it was something that you were interested
in. For me, it was like the greatest project. I was so stoked. I made this premiere in New York at the Film Archives, I think it was. And from that, I actually met Larry Cohen, who wrote Phonebooth and directed It's Alive and all these. So that was my first real Hollywood connection. He was my real first kind of mentor in film. So like that was the journey. I mean, and it kept going.
And you met that guy at the premiere?
Yeah, because he knew the woman who was our executive producer on the project. So he was like, yo.
The wife of the husband who passed?
Exactly.
Correct.
And so Larry was like, I'm here doing, some promos on Phonebooth. He's like, let's do a movie together. So he sent me 2 scripts. And the scripts were this film called Captivity, a script called Captivity, and the other one was called Message Deleted. He was like, let's move to New York and let's make a movie together. I'm fucking 22 years old. I'm like, yeah, I'm moving to New York.
Okay.
I'm moving where? How? And so the time I got into reality TV, so my first internship, this is another really random thing. I was interning at The Dating Story. Again, I got into dating reality because my cousin was like the queen of, like, she was an executive producer on all like Shipmates and like all these shows. Like, so my cousin did all these
like MTV dating shows?
All of them. She was on every, like Eliminate, like all that shit.
Date Bus or whatever?
Yeah, if you name a dating show, she probably worked on it, was some sort of producer or EP on whatever. Anyway, so she was like, oh, you should, since you're in Jersey, you should work at or intern at Banyan Productions. They were doing a baby story, a dating story, it was all the TLC shit, right?
Okay.
Like, all right, cool. So I ended up getting on A Dating Story, and now this is a complete side note, but random. One of the guys I worked with was this guy, Mike Jackson. And he was like, yeah, I used to live in LA and now I'm here in Philly. I'm just kind of getting myself together and blah, blah. Mike Jackson is now John Legend's partner. He was just up on stage for the Oscars. Like, Mike is involved in every single huge, like, Moonlight, I think he was involved. Like, Mike is doing amazing, huge things. And it's so dope because I was like, man, we were like, you were
connected at the bottom.
Yeah, you were my, like, my producing, dude who I was interning for, you were the field producer and I would go out with, and like, we would shoot fucking dating stuff, and whatever. It was just really one of those random connections. But then so at that time I was like, fuck, I got to move to New York. I got to figure this out. So there was this other woman who was an associate producer there, and she was like, it was literally, it's like, if you will it, it will happen. I was like, I need to move to New York. I'm moving to New York. I don't know how it's happening. I'm just fucking moving. I got to go work with this guy, Larry Cohen, right? And I wanted to do this.
And there was no promise of pay, nothing like that. Got to get here because we're going to make a movie.
That was it. It was just like, we're going to do it. We're going to make a movie. Yeah, cool. I'm there.
It's the only invite I need.
Yeah. And I'm like, he's like, you're going to shoot it and edit it for me. And I was like, all right, dope. So super randomly, like, Larry was like, Captivity. And I was like, I want to do Captivity. That's the script I really want to do. So I was like, I'm fucking moving to New York. This is what I'm doing. And so Suzanne, just randomly, I was like, I got to move to New York. I don't know. She's like, I have an apartment that is about to come up for a sublet that you could live in. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, done. Where is it? She's like 23rd and 8th. I'm like, Chelsea, like right in the heart of Manhattan. Okay, so when can I move? And she's like, January. I'm like, yes, moving there. And that was it.
Was it almost too good to believe?
It was. It was like, but I was like one of those things where you're just like, okay, it's meant to be. You just got to go with it. Like, put it out there. Shit works out, So I ended up moving to New York. And then, this film we were location scouting. I was putting a crew together.
Were you right to it? Like, you moved?
I moved,
like,
dude, man. I was like, we're making a fucking movie. So I figured, like, if I drive the train, Larry's just going to come and he'll figure out how to get a cast together. And because he's directed a fucking million movies in New York. And he's an older guy. At the time, he was like 70, probably 70. 69, So, like, you got an older dude who's, like, going to come out and be like, fuck yeah, I'm getting back in the game.
Yeah.
Got this young blood, 23-year-old, digital technology. We just push a button and computers make movies.
Thinking it was going to be his revamp.
Right? And he just, Phonebooth had just come out and done a killing, with was it Kiefer Sutherland, I think, was, and Colin Farrell and all that. So, I'm like,
that's the one where the guy gets the ringer in the phone booth.
Yeah.
Don't move, I'm going to shoot your ass.
Exactly. And that was Larry wrote that. So
I remember being like 12.
Right. Wow. Don't get out. Don't leave the phone booth, man.
It's not worth it,
right? Bro. It's like, and now there's no more phone booths left.
That was I think that was the first thriller I saw that I was like, what kind of movie is that? Is that a What is that?
Yeah, right?
Someone's like, that's a thriller. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, it keeps you on the edge of the seat. Well,
Yeah.
that was Larry's thing. Like, that dude wrote thrillers. So the script Captivity was dope because basically it's this supermodel gets captured and taken and held hostage with this other guy in this fucking basement. And they're separated by a plexiglass and they don't know who captured them. And they're being watched over these CCTVs, right? So I want to do this really super, like, documentary style because I just come off a documentary. And I was like, I want to have all these cameras set up and I want to fucking make this thing, like, really creepy, really weird.
Gritty.
Make it feel like it's really happening. Like, you know, like Blair Witchy type
Saw.
shit.
Oh, not Saw?
Yeah, well, or Saw. It was based off of Saw. Like,
Okay.
it was, his vibe for this was Saw, but I
Okay.
wanted to make a Blair Witch Saw.
Okay.
Like, that was my vision, right?
makes
This
sense.
is before paranormal and, you know, nobody was really doing these kind of, like, gritty. Cause
First persons,
yeah,
sort
like
of.
first person, and like, and then all of it being cut between all these cameras that are set up in this room,
Mm-hmm.
these two rooms. Anyway, ended up not working out. I ended up working at fucking Fifth Wheel. That was
He didn't see your vision, or it just
No, he
you
did,
could-
but it just we couldn't get the cast together. We couldn't get the finance. I mean, look,
shit happens.
finance movies are just like the hardest thing to fucking get made. It's like really, really tough to get a film, you know, off the ground. You know, even more so now. You know, I mean, indie films are like, you know, back then at least there was some sort of a, you know, indie vibrancy still happening where people were more interested in like, oh, we should try to, you know, do weird stuff. Well, long story short of Captivity ended up getting made. After Dark Films did it. Elisha Cuthbert starred in it. Roland Jaffe directed it. And
How was it?
I did not. It was not my vision. That's
Wasn't
all I'm
it-
going to say.
Wasn't what you had in mind?
No, and I think mine would have been way better. I was
Right.
like, it wasn't scary. It was like a wannabe fucking, it was a torture porn.
Oh.
And it really kind of put the nail in the coffin for torture porn because the guy who was distributing and producing it, this guy, I forget his name, he was doing these after
It ruined
dark
the torture porn industry?
Yeah, it ruined the torture porn industry, man. I mean, Saw was kind of that, you know, era, like starting that kind of torture porn as they started calling it because it was like violence for the sake of violence. It was like dirty, gross shit for the sake of dirty, gross shit. Oh, I'm going to cut off your hand. I'm going to put it in a blender. I'm going to make you drink it. And it's like, what? Why?
For that
Like,
weird feeling that you get down
like
your
you're like,
spine.
"Ugh." And there's somebody somewhere in America jerking off to that. And
Ugh.
it's like, that is why it's called torture porn.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's gross and it's dumb and, you know, whatever.
You don't
So-
want to be sitting next to that guy in the movie
No.
theater. Ugh.
Ugh, it's like the bad Pee Wee Herman version. You're
literally.
like, man, it's, you know, Stevie Herman is his evil twin brother. You know, oh man, but yeah, it's a different kind of playhouse. Yeah, so that was that whole arc, and I was like working in reality TV. I was like, fuck this shit, man. I'm so over fifth, you know, I was doing the Fifth Wheel. Thank God I had it because it was a job. At the time, too, I was going back and forth to, like, the main line in PA doing bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs, like, shooting fucking in weddings for this guy that was, like...
That's money,
dude,
though,
legit,
right?
bro. It was, like, $500
$5K or $500?
Well, I was getting paid $500 cash for, like, half a day. Like, and I would just come in and I would shoot it and I'd be out. And it was like, boom, $500. I mean, you're fucking 23, $500 for a half an after. Like, an afternoon on a Saturday getting paid a G was like legit. Like,
Hell yeah.
You know, I was like, this is awesome. So yeah, this
Plus,
guy,
you're getting bomb food.
yeah, dude. Oh my goodness.
It's a rager every time.
Tell me about it. Like every time the hors d'oeuvre plate would come around, I'd be like, pop up. I was just like, oh yeah, you have to be sneaky about that because you couldn't let them see you making the hors d'oeuvres because they're
Right?
like, you're just a cameraman. You're just like, fuck that.
Yeah.
Fed here, you know?
Right.
And then they would feed you because after everything got fed, they'd be like, now the help gets to get fed. And like you and all the other help get to be fed. And you're like, fine.
Like second-rate
Shuffle off.
citizen.
You're like, right, second rate. You're like, I hope the steak is still cold. I mean, still warm.
Right?
It wasn't cold, right? But anyway, so yeah, that was like that whole kind of New York journey. I mean, there was a lot of crazy other shit that went down there. But, you know, at the same time, it was like, I just became really focused on film shit. And the whole comic book thing kind of fell by the wayside. And then I moved to LA, and I kept getting looped back into comics because I became really good friends with this guy who owns the rights to Red Sonja, the comic book, and you know, he ended up getting that turned into a comic with Dynamite, or built into a comic. And so we met in New York, and then we've known each other forever. Crazy stories and all that fun stuff of being young, dumb, and running around Comic-Con and all that kind of stuff.
Tell me about Comic-Con. I wanted to touch on that. I've never been to it. All I
Never.
see is the cosplay
So
pictures and
Comic-Con, it depends on how you go. And that I mean by if you're going as a guest, You know, if you're going as someone like, you know, in the sense of like you've paid for it and whatever.
Regular consumer.
Regular consumer, you know, you're just a part of, you know, the kind of hustle and bustle and shuffle. And I went there a few times. The very first time I went to Comic-Con was with that documentary. So that was cool because we were like going to Comic-Con and we're like, we have
part of the industry.
Yeah, we're part of this shit and we have something to show.
Right.
So that was cool. And then, you know, I started going back as, you know, just hanging out and whatever. And then, you know, how did all that Comic-Con stuff?
In the last 10 years, it's blown up. It's become mainstream. People who don't even like comics go.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's not. It's like Hollywood's just kind of taking it over. I mean, the first time I went, it was just starting to happen. I think X-Men had just come out. Everybody was like, "Oh wow!" Like, you know, and they started getting the actors there, and Hall H was starting to become a thing. I mean, there wasn't the lines. Like, you could get into any. You know, you could, like when we would go, like we would like even up to 2007. I mean, I went with my buddy Luke, the Red Sony Cat, and we just were like, yo, we should just go, dude. Let's just go. And like, we just drove up. We got there, waited in line for like 10 minutes, got a ticket. Like, it was the day of. We just got a ticket and just went in. You know, it's impossible now. Like, you have to be in like waiting lists and this. But I mean, I've been a professional for the, you know, so professionally badges, you just get them, you know, so like, but every 3 years you kind of have to like re-up your, are you
credentials?
Are you still working in the industry? And I'm like, yes, I am. Here you go.
Right.
You know, here's my IMDb. Yeah. Here's some photos of stuff I've done, whatever. But yeah, actually this last Comic-Con was pretty insane. Cause I mean, so long story short of it all was I was like, okay, our book is coming out, the Will.I.Am book. So that's a whole crazy story unto itself because I literally did not think that book was even going to get made because like we finished it, we did it, and I didn't hear anything from Will for like 4 months, 5 months, and I know he was off busy doing the voice, but I turned it in. We all got, I paid my team, I got paid, project was done. In my mind, and I'm like,
he just put it into his vault as far as you knew.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. I was like, all right, I guess it's just another cool thing to show, or maybe like a piece to be like, hey, maybe we should turn this into a movie, or you know, and whatever. And then I got a call like on a Saturday night out of nowhere, like I'm with my son, and you know, we're just like I'm about to put him to bed, and it's like, I'm like, Will, and I'm like, yo, what up? And he's like, Ben, are we ready to print this comic? And I was like, no, because we don't really know the format we're going in, and we haven't gotten your final feedback. And so, you know, and he's like, well, can we meet tomorrow? And I'm like, well, I got my boy, but yeah, we'll come by the studio. He's like, all right, dope. He's like, just, you know, get a hard drive. And I'm like, I got the hard drive, man. We'll be there. So the next day I go with my son. We all hang out, and like I meet his homie Eddie, who's, you know, Eddie and Will and Eddie's design team are the ones who made, you know, physically made the look of the book. Because the book is just, it looks like a piece of art, you know. It's got the gold gilding on the sides and like this.
Is there pictures of it online?
Yeah. You can find, you know, pictures of the what do you call it, of the actual book. Yeah, it's this cool, I mean, you can't really see probably the gold gilding on the side, but you can see the image. So like this guy Ernst and Pasha, so Ernst, I think, you know, had been doing a lot of the visual developments, and him and Pasha did the cover along with some other people. I forget who's listed on the actual cover. So I mean, obviously Will as well, you know, picking the kind of image. I mean, you know, Will was very hands-on. Yeah, there you go. So that's our cover. You know, super iconic. I mean, they, you know, because Pasha and Ernst were really involved in a lot of this kind of polygonal like development of the character look, you know, and everything, which is
Marvel.
Yeah, I know, right? I've never written a comic book, and then all of a sudden it's like, what? I wrote a Marvel book, man. You know,
I mean, if you're gonna fucking do it,
you might as well go right to the top. Fuck it. You
How
know?
did you get linked up with Will?
So I met Will through a mutual.
I mean, he's my buddy now, so I call him Will.
Yeah, you can call him Will. Yeah, Will.
What's up, Will?
What up, Will?
But how'd you guys get linked up initially?
This guy I knew was working on this film with him, and he invited me over to the studio. And that was when I started talking to Will, you know, just about shit in general. And I told him about the Comic Book Sunday group that I had started. And that kind of came out of all the stuff that I'd done in comics with the, you know, all that with the documentary and whatever. And I started, you know, at this guy, Jim Kruger's house. Jim is a good friend of mine and also a very well-known comic book writer. So, you know, Will, I was telling him about the story of Comic Book Sunday and how it came together, and my vision always is creating communities where people can, you know, kind of exchange ideas. For me, the social networking stuff is useless if you can't be in a physical space, you know, to exchange ideas, because social networking and Instagrams and all that, it's great for tip of the iceberg. But real, value comes from an actual connection.
More of a mastermind group.
Yeah.
So to speak.
That's always kind of my vision in everything I do, is kind of creating, hubs for exchanges of ideas where people can connect and then kind of go off and do their own thing.
How do you keep that meaningful? You've been doing it 10 years.
I've been doing it 10 years.
People wouldn't show up if it was bullshit. So how do you keep it? How do you keep a cap on it? How do you keep it, useful and meaningful and something people want to go to?
Yeah, it's interesting because a big part of it was always, shifts of venues. When I first started, it was a very big backyard party. So for the first 2 years was insane because it was just growing exponentially.
Every week? Every Sunday?
Every month.
Okay. First Sunday of the month or something?
It was the third Sunday of every month at 3 o'clock. Like, I love the number 3. So third Sunday.
Number 4.
There you go. So everybody's got their number.
Yeah.
3 is my jam. So third Sunday at 3 o'clock, I would throw it at Jim Kruger's backyard. We'd all get together, and it started just growing and growing and growing. Because at first I was like, I invited a bunch of friends, 15 people showed up. I was like, wow, that's amazing. Wow, like, this is great. The next one, like 7 people showed up, and we're all sitting around and reading comic books. And now here's a random thing. My buddy Justin Chan, who now has this movie that just won the Sundance Award, was one of our first initial members, and Justin's movie Gook is like playing everywhere and it's like blowing up. And Justin and I know each other forever. And Justin was like one of my initial beginning members of Comic Book Sunday.
Founding member, so to speak.
Yeah, part of that first couple crew. Like he was core group, we used to call, we were the core. So it just kept growing because everyone, basically would tell their friends and tell someone else. And it basically just, elevated from that just because of the experience people were coming out of. And the people that were being met, everybody was kind of meeting quality people. Because for me, it's like I introduce so-and-so and I build my core group of quality people. And then from them, they bring in their quality people. So there's quality kind of control, if you will. So it becomes a very vetted community and it builds from there, So it really grew and grew. I started doing it at Titmouse Animation Studios, who at the time were doing Metalocalypse and Venture Brothers. And now they're one of the biggest animation studios in all of LA and who knows, maybe the world,
Right.
They're huge. I mean, so
well, if you're biggest in LA.
Yeah, I mean, and they
entertainment capital.
They're amazing. I mean, Chris P is a buddy of mine who owns the studio, and I ended up working with one of my dearest friends, John Schnapp, who at the time was working the Metalocalypse stuff, but was transitioning to a lot of his other things. And he and I actually, bringing back Justin Chan, we all did this little pilot together, and that was how John and Justin, like, I love to mix and match my groups and like bring random people together and like see what happens. It's kind of like science,
Yeah, for sure.
So that was kind of the beginning. We just kept growing, and Meltdown Comics has always been a big supporter of it. Gaston is like, an old dear friend, and they would always help promote it. And then recently, I kind of have been rebranding and rebuilding it. Because at the time, I was also getting a video game element. I was doing Video Game Saturday, so I was like cross-promoting and getting people from Video Game Saturday to come to Comic Book Sunday and vice versa. Da, da, da. But now I've like rebranded it where it's like comic books, music, and video games. So it's kind of a pop culture, hub, and we just get all sorts of random people. We just actually had one Sunday, with Masters of the Sun book. And selling the book, and we're doing a signing, and Will and everybody was going to, the guys, Will, Tab, and App, were all going to try to come, but they ended up having to do a music video. I mean, it's the life of rock stars. They got to do the music video stuff, and,
right?
But it was dope. I mean, Will's like, he FaceTime in, and he's like, you guys gonna still be there? I'm like, we'll be here for another couple hours. I mean, if you can make it, awesome. And he's like, I'll try. So, respect to those guys, because those guys, they've been super supportive of everything. And when I got into that mix, kind of wrapping around to Will, him hearing about the community building and everything, I think that might have been a big part of, why he was like, all right, this guy seems to know a lot of people, and I want to do, a comic book, but I want to do it in the right way where it's not just done for the sake of it. And I think, he gets that, where it's like a lot of times a lot of people that are like, musicians or superstar actors, they end up doing it in the wrong way, where they don't bring in the right core group of people to do the project that will then give it that kind of vetting of making it like where people are like, oh, look at that, Will.I.Am is trying to get into the comic book business,
Right.
screw that guy, why should we read it, stay doing music, whatever. There's always like, and especially with comics, it's a very closed community, and it's a very, insular, and every comic geek is like, no man, screw that, like I'll only read if it's, a lot of purists, and there's a lot of that kind of hate, and I think, with me, it was like, I've always been a very, community driven person, and I've given so much to the comic book community that it's like, all right, well, here's my foray into comic books, help me out, team,
right.
like look out for us. So it was like that kind of thing that I think gave us a good vibe to build the comic, if you will. It kind of gave it a positive energy moving forward, and and the team that I built was just top of the line. I mean, Damian Scott, is the artist, Dave Lamphere is the letterer, Sig Tor is the colorist. I also had brought on Jim Kruger, who I had, started the Comic Book Sunday with as my story consultant, and my comic book consultant, because having never written a comic book before, but knowing the world and knowing,
you spent enough time behind the scenes.
Yeah. And I just wanted to make sure, for me, it was like, I want to make sure I have a backstop, and also want to make sure I have a backstop who is vetted and known and loved by the comic book business, and who's also a friend of mine that I can trust and, have a already built rapport. So Jim was like, yeah, man, I would love to do it. I'm like, awesome, let's figure this out. So, he was very instrumental in kind of helping guide the way in the very beginning, and kind of helping me get my training wheels off, so to speak. So
giving you the confidence to say, I'm doing it right. This is how it goes.
Absolutely. And so like once I kind of had the training wheels off, I was like, all right, dope, we're running with this, So like that was really the kind of inception of how this all, kind of took off. And then we made it and we were done, and it was like, all right, cool. And then like cut to then 5 months later after it was done, Will being like, hey, are we ready to go with this? And I'm like, yeah, let's meet up. So we met up at the studio and we discussed, how we can move forward. I met up with Eddie and the design team, and, Eddie was, Eddie and Dave Lamphere really, Eddie Axley, and Dave Lamphere really, became the kind of final delivery core of making sure, all the pages and this and and then I worked on edits and rewrites and all that kind of stuff. So we delivered that, and we were finishing it up, and we were just going to self-publish. And then Taboo, read the book and was like, dude, he's like, we should take this to Marvel. So I've done all this story out at Comic-Con, right? So
the artist from Black Eyed Peas Taboo?
Yeah, so Black Eyed Peas Taboo. So like, again, the only people I knew in this entire process, the only person I had any contact with was Will. I had Will's number and email, and that was the only way to get in touch with Will. And if he didn't answer, he didn't email me back, I didn't know who the fuck to like call up and be like, yo,
what do I do?
What are we doing here? So then Eddie came in the mix, and that was great because Eddie, was able to work with Eddie and, kind of making sure we're delivering the final process of the book. So, we got that all done, and then I find this out post-process. So Eddie's like, yo, it looks like we got a publisher. And I'm like, for real? I'm like, all right, cool. Like, well, he's like, I can't say much more about it right now, but like things are moving. And I'm like, all right, dope. So then I get a FaceTime from Will, and I'm like, what up, dude? And he's like, yo, Marvel's publishing. He's like, I'm just leaving the office. I'm like, I'm in New York. He's like, I was like, what? I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, man.
So he went and
Marvel.
closed the deal.
Yeah, like him and Tab went to fucking Marvel Studios or Marvel Comics, and
I guess you fucking answer when Will.I.Am calls, no matter who you are or what it's about.
I'll tell you, the only time I haven't answered Will, he was in Germany, and we were gonna do a brainstorm on this book too, right? It's 3:30 in the morning. My son's in bed. And I said, yeah, let's talk at 11 a.m. I meant 11 a.m. Pacific. Maybe, he probably saw 11. I was like, yo, let me hit up Ben. 3:30 in the morning. And I'm like, and I text him like, bro, like, I can't talk. My boy's asleep. Hit you in the AM. So that's the only time I will not take calls on a Saturday night, 3:30 in the morning when I have my son. So,
right. Well, I was thinking Marvel, too. Marvel's like, hello? Well, yeah, come on in.
Well, yeah,
come on down. What are you gonna talk about?
Well, exactly. I mean, that's the other thing too. I mean, Will. The great thing with Will is, I mean, he's such a awesome dude that just knows so many amazing people, and again, he's such a creative spark in so many things. I mean, I look at Will as like, he is the outlet. If there's plugs, Will becomes like this outlet. You plug into that outlet and shit lights up.
Yeah.
And that power is able to be put out to the world. It becomes all these lights that just start turning on, and and he and his infrastructure that he's building and built. With I.Am Plus in the studio, I mean, it's phenomenal. So like you have again you have that kind of thing, and so like obviously Tab and Will go to Marvel, and Marvel goes, yeah, let's do this. So Axel Alonso, I think, who's the editor-in-chief of Marvel, like loved it, super supportive, And
where's Marvel's headquarters? Here?
Well, there's New York is publishing, and then obviously film, which is kind of completely is somewhat separate. I mean, obviously everything's owned by Disney, but is here in LA. But so yeah, with the Marvel side of it, I mean, that just like became like, wow, like this is real, like this is okay, like like.
We out here.
Yeah, and what was cool, because like from the very inception of this, Will and I always were like, kind of talking about how do we do this? Do we do this, when it comes to music, do we make it something that, is kind of a collab album with Black Eyed Peas and with old school hip hop artists, and because it takes place in the 80s, excuse me, so it's like all 80s hip hop. It takes place little I like to put this, my Easter egg that I put in there. It takes place on May 8th, 1983, which is my 3-year-old birthday. So the entire night of this fucking book, I wrote this while I was 3. It happens while, so
your number,
my number,
back
my
to
magic
3
number. So, I for me, everything has to have some sort of meaning, in the writing or in the creation of stuff. And, so basically that was like the whole build of this project. I mean, it was just like a fucking wild ride, man. And
I mean, it sounds so natural and organic, but if you wouldn't have done what you needed to do in the 10 years previous, you wouldn't have been in the spot to say, oh yeah, I am a relationship hub. I bring different industries together. I help blend these lines and give opportunities to people in different industries through each other.
Well, I think, that really is the thing. I mean, I feel like, timing is everything. I mean, it really is. And it's like, you can just keep, it's having a vision, it's like persistence and just pursuing that kind of project, and if you don't just keep going, and being open, I think that's a huge thing. Cause it's like, if I was always so closed off to comics, cause at the time I was kind of a film snob. I was like, I don't want to do films. I'm out here to make movies,
right,
and make movies that mean something and some that blow shit up, whatever. And, like, I think if I hadn't kind of taken that time to just become appreciative of storytelling and being a film editor, it's like, so I have 2 films that I've edited, features that, are under my belt. And like, that was a huge learning process. So what happened, it was cool because I was coming off of editing a feature with Corbin Burnson called Christian Mingle when I ended up getting...
Is that a dating website movie?
It's a dating website movie.
Was it good? A comedy?
Yeah, it's a comedy.
Okay.
Gretchen Wiener is the star, aka Lacey Chabert. I was about to say Alyssa Milano. No, Lacey Chabert. She was awesome. It was super fun. Like, we went up north to Turlock and we made this movie. Corbin loves to have his editor on set. So I'm there on set. I got my assistant and we're like just fucking hanging out. We're making a movie, And it was super dope. And like, that was the first feature I'd ever edited. And Corbin gave me a shot. It was like, because I knew him through a mutual friend who I'd done a ton of stuff with. He was a TV guy. And he's like, Corbin, you need to bring in Ben. He's got good comedy timing and good storytelling and all this. And, so I was like, cool, man. And he's like, have you ever edited a film before? I'm like, yeah, of course I have. Edited lots of films.
You ever see that short from my Rutgers summer school class?
Yeah. That one with Mom, she was awesome.
Right?
Drinking coffee, but yeah, it was like one of those dope moments where it's like, I can do it, I got it, and we did it, we killed it, and it's on Netflix. You can watch the movie, it's out there.
What's it called?
It's called Christian Mingle.
Christian Mingle. It's a Christian dating site.
Yeah,
comedy.
Christian Mingle, the dating service, had our backs on it. I had a great library of music to work from with Christian Capital Music, so I was able to use all this great Christian music.
Christian rock.
Christian rock.
Hell yeah.
Which, funnily, is that a word? Enough. Like, there's a lot of dope music in there. Like, there's some really sick shit. So, it was really cool.
Playing for the Lord, bro.
Right?
Just giving it up for Jesus. What do you expect there not to be some talent in there, bro? Come on.
You gotta drop that beef with Jesus Christ.
You wit.
So it was fun, man. And, but coming out of that, it gave me the confidence to be like, fuck, man. if I can edit a movie and I've never edited a movie before and do this and figure this out, yeah, I can do a comic book. I got this shit. So that was really, I finished that in like February, that film. And then I meet Will in May and I start the comic in September. Like that was like the timeline. It was like really crazy. And it really happened very quickly. Cause like in May I read the script cause it was originally based on a screenplay that Will had written with this other cat, Near. And, they couldn't, the movie, it wasn't ready to be shot as a movie. There was just, it needed a lot of development. And the guy that I had met through to Will was going to direct it. So he's like, it needs a lot of rewrites. It needs like, it needs work. But there's a really good structure there and there's some really good stuff, and that was really how that happened. I was like, all right, I'll do it. And it was called Zombie Nation at the time. And I was like, I hate zombies. I don't want to do a zombie. Like, truthfully, like I was like, I'll meet with Will because he like, he's a cool dude. But like, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to do this. Like, I want to do something I'm really passionate about. But I read it and I was like, wow, like this is about crack. This is about hip hop. This is about Egyptology. This is about aliens. I was like, fuck, man.
You judged a book by its cover, bro.
Well, you know what? I didn't completely. I had an initial reaction.
Fair.
Let's just say, like, it was like, Ben, would you like to eat cow brains? They're called sweetbreads. And I'm like, I don't know.
All right.
I don't know about that sweet bread. But then I tasted it and it was quite delicious. So,
right. So you dove in and you're like, I'm fucking down with this comic book or the storyline.
Yeah, and it was really cool. So, and I saw the layers and the cool stuff we could do. And then when I brought on Damian Scott, the illustrator, to do the book, and obviously had to run everything by Will. I was like, yo, here are these 3 illustrators I want to work with. Damian's like dope. This guy literally wrote the book on how to draw hip hop comics. Like, this guy's awesome, and I've talked to him. He's really, really interested. I think we'd have a really great, great team. And Will was like, that's the guy. I want Damian. I'm like, all right, that's the guy.
Did he even listen to the other 2, or right when you told him about Damian, he said, I'm in?
He saw, obviously it's like, for working with somebody like Will, it's like, here are options. Here's what we got. What do you want to go with, and he just goes, that guy, and I think, that was really, it was really, just a very, or again, back to, it was organic, it was just naturally kind of just happened, but Damian, and I totally hit it off, and Damian was on to like Egyptology and, so that was really, how this all kind of, came together. It was
what
like this
Egyptology in a nutshell is Egyptians are ancient aliens?
Well, it ties into a lot of this kind of ideas of like Anunnaki being the gods that came down and gave technology to eat.
Are you a conspiracy guy?
There's some, but I mean, look, there was a documentary that just came out with the BBC saying how the Great Pyramid of Giza was built and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, again, who knows? There's a lot of logic leaps we have to make where we came from apes to human beings. Like, where are these kind of genetic drop-offs? And I like to exploit that for storytelling because I'm like, there's a lot of great, awesome space to like get creative, and who knows, maybe we'll touch on something dope,
right?
So like that's kind of how it all came together. And there was like I was saying, there's some really great bones in the script that Will and Near had done, and we were able to take that and build it out. But yeah, so like that was all done. We finished the book. Marvel's on board, and then all of a sudden, back to the Comic-Con of it all. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to come to Comic-Con this year because I hadn't heard anything. I just knew that I think our book was coming out in July. Knew nothing, right? And both the places I was going to crash at fell through, and I was like super depressed. I remember I was like lying on my couch. I'm like, this sucks. Like, I've like been such a big part of this thing, and like this was like my baby, like watching this thing grow, and I was so like, my bedroom is literally covered in all of the pages of the book. That's how I was doing my edits, and I didn't hear anything from any, like I hadn't, and again, I only knew Will and Eddie, and and I hadn't really reached out to them. I was like, or I'd reached out to Will ages ago. I was like, hey, are we doing anything? And and the 2 places I had fell through, and then I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna email Will and be like, yo, what up, dude? Like, I would like to come, but I don't think I'm going to make it just because I don't have a place to stay, And I'm like, I'm not trying to put you out. Like, I'm trying to come on my own shit. I got my pass and whatever. And so, like, he hits me up. He's like, just roll with us, dude. And I was like, all right. So, like, I get down there, don't have a place. I'm like, yo. And they, like, hook me up with Polo, who's the dude's dopest. Like, he's their, executive manager. Him and Sarah, who've been amazing, And Polo's like,
And they make sure everything runs smoothly.
Dude, like, yeah. And so, like, I hit up Polo, and he's like, your family, we got you. He's like, don't worry. He's like, dude, they got me Thursday night, like, last minute, got me a fucking room for myself at the Hard Rock Cafe, the Hard Rock Hotel. I was like, I will sleep on a floor. I don't care. I'm like, I've done this before at Comic-Con so many times.
Right.
Where I've literally just crashed on floors and whatever. So, he was like, no. He's like, we got you.
Damn,
like,
that's love.
Yeah, dude. They're all about that. And then the next morning, like, I'm going down the elevator. I got to work out, the stuff with the hotel because they were like, well, you can't have a room for you on Friday. Like, the hotel was like, we're booked up Friday. So then they hooked me up with another hotel. Paul's like, we got this. So I'm riding the elevator down, and who do I get in with? And it's Will. And I'm like, yo, what up, Will? And he's like, yo, what up, Ben Jackendoff? Like, so he's there with Ralston, his security guy, and I was like, where are you going? He's like, we're going to EW, the Entertainment Weekly, do an interview, blah, blah. I was like, you mind if I tag along? He's like, yeah, come on, dude. Let's go, bro. I was like, all right, cool. Yeah, so I go to that whole thing, and I meet everybody else. I meet Sarah, and I meet Taboo, and Apple, and, like, everybody's super dope. And, like, and that was what was so cool about it. It was just, like, all of a sudden, like, I know nobody, and then all of a sudden it's like, pfft. Now I'm like knowing everybody in the mix. I'm like, all right, like I can get used to this. Put the work in
previous though.
Well, I mean, I've been let down so many times in this Hollywood bullshit business, where people always say, oh yeah, we're gonna do this or we're gonna do that, we're gonna blah blah blah, and and you put in the work. You put in the work with that hope that all right, maybe it's this one, maybe this is the one where people are gonna go, all right, we're gonna, we got you.
We'll ride with you.
Yeah, or we're gonna like take you along with this, and this was that one where it really worked out. So like, and Will hit me up like after with everything. He was like, dude, we gotta work together. We gotta keep working together. I'm like, dude, I'm down. I'm like, we should do a book too. Like, I'm like, this is like, he's like, let's do this. Let's fucking do this. Let's, and
good.
And that was really what happened where, Marvel's got our back on it from, like they love us. They love the project, and what's interesting too, like this is a very interesting deal for Marvel because it's technically still like in-house. Like Marvel this is not a Marvel book. It is a Marvel book, but it's not like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like one of their Spider-Man thing. But what's really cool about it is that we're a part of the Marvel world without
being part of their giant story.
Yeah, but then the question is can we be a part of that giant story? Will it be a part of the story? Stay tuned. Who knows?
That would be, I mean,
right?
That'd be the ideal, right? And then turn it into a movie franchise and you score the music.
TV franchise. Netflix, television, Amazon, like there's a lot of dope opportunities out there.
Right.
So, but the cool thing about this project has been, not only that, with the comic, it then spawned into this augmented reality thing, which has been in the development for a very long time, which is having been launched now at New York Comic Con. Because we're in the future. And with that, I'll drop some names on that. Common just recorded on it. Queen Latifah, Rakim, but Exhibit, Method Man, Pete Rock, Ice-T. Like this is the biggest hip hop multimedia project that I think has ever been done. And it crosses all categories, and you're gonna put your headphones on and you're gonna take your like augmented reality glasses from Mira,
all those artists that you were talking about
are gonna read this book to you.
This book,
Masters of the Sun, Zombie Chronicles, like it's already been recorded. That is
so cool.
You know who plays Zulu X? KRS-One.
Oh dude,
right?
Like legends. Everyone you mentioned was legends.
Which is what is so cool about it, because it comes back full circle to what Will and I, when we were originally talking about it, like we're like, how do we do this? Is it like Black Eyed Peas collab? All this, it became a Black Eyed Peas collab. Like it ultimately became exactly what we said from the very beginning, but in a whole kind of new way, where that augmented reality side just kind of really grew into something that it just everybody, once they started hearing about it, everybody wanted to be a part of this project. Like every single like hip hop legend was like, I'm down.
I love comic books.
Yeah, and love what we the book itself, what it is. It's like it's a love letter to hip hop. I mean, that's really what it is. Like it's saying like comics have inspired hip hop and hip hop has inspired comics. And this is the first comic book that is like a love letter to hip hop.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hip hop has been like kissing cousins to fantasy forever, like even Kendrick now, his latest tour of Damn, it was all about like Mortal Kombat It was his whole back imagery, and I was just like, huh. And then you got Wu-Tang Clan from like the ancient movies.
And the comics that they even put in. Yeah, and the Chinese films. I mean, so much interweaves with entertainment and comics, and and hip hop itself is a found form. It's a found art form, and I always equate it to skateboarding. And the one thing that I see that's really sad about hip hop that I hope we can do with a project like this, or more projects like this, is that it reconnects fans as well as artists to those that came before, because nothing is built without the legends. Right. Everything is built on the backs of someone before, and these are the people that blaze the trails. And I I love skateboarding, and I look at skateboarding as a found art form, because it was like, all right, well, street skateboarding came out of like, you can't skate in this bowl, you got kicked off, so then the kids started skating on the fucking curbs and shit, and then all of a sudden street skateboarding was found. Well, skateboarding was found because it was like, oh, well, we can't surf all the time, so we're gonna skate. So like, this is how art happens. It just organically grows into something super dope, Excuse me. And then the great thing about skateboarding is that now, I was at the Battle of the Barracks, this last Battle of the Barracks, and Rodney Mullen, like, I'm like standing there, and then the fucking mutt walks up, and like, oh my God, it's Rodney Mullen,
right,
like nerding out. And the crazy thing, 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds like, oh my God, it's Rodney Mullen. Like, it was so amazing to see that the culture has maintained throughout all the generations, because skateboarding is a taught street form. It's like brought down, and you're like, all right, if you're gonna skate this park or whatever, you gotta like, where do these tricks come from? Everybody watches the videos and all that shit. So like,
you can't just be good, you got to be accepted. As well.
Exactly. Skating is like, it's so much more, and it's a culture, and it's just like hip hop. Hip hop is a culture. It's about, clothing, it's about style, it's about just, the dancing, the B-boys, it's about the music, it's about the mentality, and I think that's where hip hop now has been lost. And you look at a lot of these young guys, like, and I think this is why a lot of the old heads are pissed off, because they're like these little yachties and the
young thug, little yachty. Yeah.
And it's like, all right, cool. Like, you're a part of this hip hop culture, but the fact is you gotta throw the respect to the back. You gotta like not.
But
be
they
like,
don't.
Yeah, and you see Kendrick and Chance the Rapper are of that. They're young guys that are coming up and be like, yo, this is where our heritage is and our lineage is, and we're not just talking about drug use and drug abuse and Percocets. We're talking about coming together as a family and unity and culture and on all this kind of stuff. And I think that's what we need to do as a future moving forward. Like, I just see, look, we can all rely as much as we want on government shit and whatever, but at the end of the day, it's about community. And when you build grassroots communities and crossover niche communities, you basically have something that can grow and be more dynamic than,
hip hop was empowering as to communities because it was intelligence previously. Now it's like, if you're a hip hop head, it's kind of like, oh damn, like you're into like drugs and bitches, and not to hate on anybody, but before it was like, oh, he's, to use a new term, oh, he's woke, that's dope. Exactly. Like, oh shit, he likes hip hop, he's woke, he's smart, he understands that he, he's in a situation.
And that's what our book is about. On the back, it's like hashtag stay woke is the last thing you see on the last cover. So, so that is.
I mean all that culture is contributing to just the fucked up of what's going on,
Yeah, I mean, it's just making people like more and more just, complacent to the bullshit and just being like, oh, this is the new norm.
Yeah.
It's the new norm.
It shouldn't be like that.
No.
So you're stoked about the movies, comic books turning into movies, potentially turning into augmented reality, even virtual reality.
Well, I'm just stoked. I mean, look, what I'm stoked on is the future of storytelling. I think that's really what excites me the most. I think that, whether it's a movie, the problem was for me coming up, it was always about how do you tell a story? Oh, you want to tell a story to the most amount of people, it has to be a film, because that's the biggest platform of distribution.
That was the medium of the time.
Yeah, and now it's changed. Now it's shifted. I mean, with this augmented reality book, you're going to get audio. You're going to get Hans Zimmer does the score. Like, how crazy is that? Hans and Will do the score. Like, what? So, like, Masters of the Sun, there's going to be an album that's tied. They're already finishing that up in the studio right now. Like, this is
crazy.
Fucking,
that's so cool, man.
It's crazy. And to think that, like, I was, like, doing this in my little fucking, I was just Barnes & Noble in Burbank writing this fucking book, like, just on my own with my headphones on, just listening to music and, like, hand writing this fucking thing and be like, I have no idea what this is going to become, but I feel like it's dope, and we just got to, make this shit. Now it's like, this thing has launched 1,000 ships, so it's really sick to see that happen,
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
So when is that book on shelves ready for
Books
purchase?
on shelves, man. You
Cool.
can go Barnes and Noble. You can pick it up at Amazon. You can anywhere.
Do the old comic book shops
Old
have it?
comic
Golden
shops,
Apple,
dude.
all those
Golden
places.
Apple's got it. Yeah, Meltdown. We just did an event at Pop Secret Gallery, so you can pick it up at Pop Secret. I think he's still got some books left there.
Awesome. You
So-
guys got an Instagram for it or a website?
I'm trying to think. I mean, I have my Comic Book Sunday Instagram, so you can follow that.
At Comic Book Sunday.
At Comic Book Sunday, which is the Instagram handle. Obviously, you can follow the Black Eyed Peas, follow Will.I.Am, Taboo.
He'll be
Apple.
posting about it.
Yeah, Sarah, she's the Raymaker, Ramaker. She posts a lot about what's going on with the book and what's happening. I don't know. There is like a Masters of the Sun Instagram. I don't know how active it is or who's running it. I'm assuming
Comic Book Sunday though is going to be the spot.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep posting. I'm always posting stuff about that, and for me, like that's really my hub of making sure there's a lot of presence and
Good man.
movement.
Well, I would ask what you have in store for 2018, but you got a lot of shit coming out.
Yeah,
Good luck, brother.
there's a ton of stuff, and I'm also doing an album right now with Kate's old roommate.
Nice.
Soon to be our old roommate.
Comedy album? What?
No, music.
Strictly music.
Strictly music. Yeah, we're closing in on our first track, almost being done, and then we've got 3 others. So it's
rock,
a concept
alternative
album.
rock, or what? Drum and bass.
No, it's weird. It's like electro pop.
Yeah.
I guess you would call it electro pop. It's
Okay.
kind of like M83 vibe, XX, like that kind of.
Okay.
And I always kind of infuse it with like certain amounts of like hip hop and experimental shit. That's kind of
Cool.
my vibe.
That'll be
so
available on iTunes, I assume.
someday, whatever, when we finish it. Yeah.
It's so easy to get shit up there
Is it?
now.
I don't know. I don't know. Like I just got back into music, so this is my first. Like community wise, I have these jam nights every Thursday, so I've like way gotten back into music. So I've been connecting all these musicians together every Thursday, and I was like, "Fuck this! I got to do my own." So like, my buddy Ruslan was like, "Hey, you should talk to Lubna, my wife's best friend," and I was like, "All right." And then in the small world of it all, Lubna and my sister actually worked together at this place called the Tuning Fork. So I was like, "Okay." That's
Cool.
dope. So,
Dude, well, thank you so much for coming by. You
Absolutely, man.
literally educated the shit out of me on, and you really inspired me on how to create an organic community. I mean, that was kind of the brainchild of this. I said, fuck, I used to play pro football. I'm in the real estate industry. I know a lot of interesting people.
Sure.
How can I get them to know that we're all closer than they think? And
Yeah.
how can we get to be working together? So this was kind of
That's
born.
sick, man. Yeah, I know nothing about you. We just jumped into me. I would love to we can do that another time or whatever. I know you got to wrap it up, but
Yeah.
I mean, I think for me, community is such an important thing, and I think with community, it's about frequency. It's about creating habits. And as long as you can create a space and a habit, you can build from there. And it's like once you get past the growing pains of it, you just start, organically just growing. I mean, you just keep watering it, and even when it seems like it's not going to grow, it is growing. It's like a plant.
Yeah.
You look at it, you're like, it doesn't look like it's growing, and then all of a sudden, a little, and you're like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
And
then beneath the soil was where all the hard work was going on, for
Exactly.
sure.
So yeah,
Inspiring to me, man.
Dope.
I really want to get the community that I'm building around this into in person. Fourth Sunday
that's
of the month.
nice.
That's what I'm
Fourth
gonna try
Sunday,
to
you
do. I
should
wrote that down.
Yeah, you
Fourth
should.
Sunday at 4:00.